Hello and welcome to the Bookshelf Odyssey. My name is Art and I'm the host of this channel. Today I want to do a Victober tag. This was originated by Kate Howe over on her channel, I believe all the way back in 2016. So I thought it would be fun to do this as a part of Victober to help celebrate Victorian literature. So the first question is, what is the first piece of Victorian literature that you read? This one, we have to go way back to when I was 12, 13 years old or so. Well, no, a little older, 14, 15, in that age group. I had started trying to read Great Expectations because I heard a trailer for a mini-series about it on the radio. I think it was on a classical music station or something. And I thought, wow, that sounds really good. I want to try it out. And I heard of Charles Dickens, of course. Christmas Carol was my favorite Christmas movie at the time. I hadn't read the book yet. So I tried reading Great Expectations and I got through the opening chapters. It took me a while. It was very hard reading. I read nothing like it as a teenager, young teenager. It was definitely a step up in my reading life, but I just couldn't get through it at the time. I liked the opening chapters, when Pip was in the graveyard and at Christmas, and it was very atmospheric. It really pulled me in. But then about the time when he starts going to Miss Havisham's house, it kind of lost me there. So I put it aside, but I thought what I understood, I really liked. I just don't think I'm there yet in my reading ability. And I just knew that. So I put that aside. And a couple years later, then I read A Christmas Carol. I wanted to read the book. I realized, I love different movie versions of it. I liked Christmas. So I thought, why haven't I read this before? And so I had listened to an audio version of A Christmas Carol read by Patrick Stewart and was just blown away. I was a big Star Trek fan at the time. So to have, Captain Picard reading A Christmas Carol, this was amazing. But I realized it was kind of an edited version. It was like a one-man performance of it. So I ran to my library, got A Christmas Carol, and I read it all on one day on Christmas Eve. And it was life-changing. I loved it. And I don't think I've ever been the same since. So kind of a multi-answer to that question. What piece of Victorian literature, what was the first piece of literature that you read? And after that, it just began a lifelong love of Victorian literature. The second question is, what is your favorite Victorian novel? And the only answer I have to that is Kate, how dare you? How dare you ask me such a difficult question? It'd be so easy for all my answers to be Charles Dickens. I'd have to say it would either be A Christmas Carol or A Tale of Two Cities. Maybe a third one if I'm allowed to answer more than one. I actually really like Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte. Both of her novels I really liked, but I think I like Agnes Grey better. It's maybe just a little bit happier than The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, but also I like the romance story in Bronte's book, in Agnes Grey. I really like that story. So, but Great Expectations, David Copperfield, The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, so many good books that I could pick. Yeah, that's a hard question. What is your favorite Victorian novel? It's like saying, what's your favorite child or who's your favorite kid? It changes depending on the day, right? All right. So question 3, who is your favorite Victorian author? Again, this is going to come as no surprise unless this is your very first video. And I would expect even by this point, you probably have guessed it. It's Charles Dickens. And I mean, that's pretty basic, I know, But hey, I love his work. I love his writing. Something about the way he writes and the way he observes the world just connects to me on a very deep level. He lived an interesting life during an interesting time. He was a character. He could be very difficult to deal with, but also just a creative force that I don't think comes around very often. Charles Dickens is definitely my favorite Victorian author. Number 4, who is your favorite Victorian literary couple? In Little Dorrit, we have Little Dorrit and Arthur Clenham. I think that's probably my favorite Victorian couple. Maybe a second one, and this is number 2 just because it's so small, would be Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig in A Christmas Carol. I don't know. I felt like she just compliments him so much. They fit together like a great team, and it's just a small portion in that story, but there's so much life and energy and vivacity there that those two really just shine for me in that story. So, but overall, I would say the couple in Little Dorrit is probably my favorite. That whole story is just magnificent. Your favorite, number 5, your favorite Victorian villain. I should retake this, trying to give you answers that aren't Dickens related, because again, my mind goes to Charles Dickens, and probably Uriah Heep from David Copperfield. He's slimy, he's gross, he's creepy. He just gets under my skin. But Dickens has written some fabulous villains. Another one from David Copperfield would be David's stepfather, who is just straight up evil. He gives me the creeps also. In that scene where he beats David and locks him in his room, and David's just brokenhearted and crying his heart out. It's just, so heartrending. That scene gets me every time. Yeah, I'd probably have to say those villains in David Copperfield are up there on my favorite. And by favorite, I don't really enjoy reading them. I want them to get their just desserts. Number 6, your favorite book where someone dies of consumption. Good question. I would have to say, spoilers if you haven't read it, but The Old Curiosity Shop does Nell die from consumption? I don't know. She dies. I don't know. This is like a Victorian drinking game here. If somebody in your book dies of consumption, take a shot. Your poor liver might not last a book. Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. But I do like The Old Curiosity Shop. And I love the story when Dickens is writing serially as it's getting closer to the end of the story of the Old Curiosity Shop. It's getting near the end, and little Nell is been sick, and the story is told that when the parts arrive, I think it was in America when the edition copy arrived on the boat, there was a crowd waiting there for the copy of the next installment of Dickens's story, and they're asking, does little Nell live? Does she live or does she die? They were caught up in the story in a way that we don't see as often today. Side note, I mean, maybe with the last book of Harry Potter was something that closely approached that kind of dedication and involvement in a creator's storyline. But yeah, I'd have to go with The Old Curiosity Shop. Question 7, what is the longest Victorian novel you've read? It's probably going to be another Dickens novel. I'm sorry. I was going to say Les Miserables, but that's not a Victorian novel. So it was probably Bleak House. I think that's Dickens's longest novel, and it's got to be the longest novel or Victorian novel that I've read. It's hard to tell because, depending on the edition of the book you have, the pages vary. So I couldn't say for sure, but I would be willing to bet it was Bleak House, another book well worth the time it takes to read. Question 8, a Victorian author or book you feel is underrated. Okay, This is a non-Dickens answer. So I just to show you, I do read things other than Dickens. And I'm going to cheat and give you two. Hester by Margaret Oliphant, and then Olive by Dinah Maria Craik. Especially Olive tells the story of it's a Victorian novel. It tells the story of a woman named Olive, or a young lady named Olive, who's born with a hunchback or a crooked spine, and society overlooks her, and it's assumed she will never marry, things like that, and it just tells the story of her life. And not a lot of people I know have read it or even heard of it, but I think it's such an amazing story. Especially considering the time period it was written in. And the same goes with Hester. There's a powerful story of a woman who takes control of her life and of her finances. And that seems strange to describe today by our standards, fortunately. But back then, this was a revolutionary novel, and it's still, I think, still pretty powerful today, and is a pretty powerful story today. But Olive especially is one that I really enjoy, that I think is underrated, and folks should check that. You should check that out. Question 9: the most beautiful edition of a Victorian classic you have. I was going to show you all my Christmas Carol editions because I think they're beautiful, but I might save that for a Christmas video. I like collecting the Everyman's Library Classics editions of Charles Dickens's books. Here's just for an example, Bleak House. Just an absolutely gorgeous cover. I love the spine. The book itself is a red cover. I don't necessarily like the feel of this. It's a little scratchy. It kind of skews me out a bit at times, but I love this one especially. It's just gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous cover. So it might be one in that series, but Bleak House especially is beautiful. But I just wanted to show you this new antique book I picked up. I got it off eBay. It's The Warden by Anthony Trollope. It's very old. The copyright I found on the inside is from 1859, I believe. Yeah, and then the copyright is 1859. You can kind of see it there. It looks like it was printed by a German press, and I don't know. It's old. It's very, very old, but I thought it was just beautifully done, and you can still see just a little bit of the gold emboss edges there, although it's since kind of faded off. And it's been around. It doesn't look like it's been read very much, and there's no writing or anything on the inside. And I picked it up for what I think was almost a steal, to be honest. But I just love the old antique books, and especially this design you see a lot in old Victorian era novels. So back then, this might have been considered a pretty basic edition, but I think it's beautiful. Mostly because of just how old it is and how fragile it feels. There's some beauty there. Number 10, list the 3 unread Victorian books you want to try. At this point, I've read quite a few Victorian novels, but I know there are hundreds left that I haven't read. So I guess it's hard to say, but I want to read more Anthony Trollope. I've read his Chronicles of Barsetshire series, The Warden, the Barchester Towers, the books in that series. Let's see, Dr. Thorne, Framley Parsonage, The Small House at Allington, and The Last Chronicle of Barset. And I love that series. And I've just started his Palliser series, but I want to read more of his books. I'd love to read all of them. That's quite a feat because he wrote a lot. I also want to read all of Mary Elizabeth Braddon's books, and I just started, as you saw in my last Victober update video, I just started Aurora Floyd, but she wrote quite a few books as well, some great short stories, so I want to read more of her. A third one? Boy, that's a good question. Third one. Let me check the old TBR. Margaret Oliphant is another author I want to read more of. She wrote Hester. Really liked her work. So instead of giving you 3 novels, I gave you 3 authors. Hope that was okay. I want to read more, and their works are on my TBR list, pretty high up on my classics TBR list. Yeah, I have TBR lists divided among genres. Okay, I've got my mystery TBR, I've got a science fiction TBR, I've got a fantasy TBR, a classics TBR. See, I have an audiobook TBR. So, yeah, I got a problem. So I guess that should wrap up the Victorian tag video. I hope that you found that enjoyable and insightful. If there's nothing else you take away from this video, I love Charles Dickens, and I need to read more of books by other Victorian writers. See if they can break that my top 10 list. So I should probably go and tackle my TBR list here. It's not getting any shorter. So until next time, I hope you enjoy exploring your bookshelves. Happy reading.